U.S. beef industry leaders are confident long-standing Chinese restrictions on imports of U.S. beef will be lifted. China is concerned about the safety of U.S. beef since the mad cow disease broke out in 2003.
Some experts are saying the increases could come as a result of the new reciprocal tariffs put in place yesterday by President Trump. So what does all of this mean for our local beef, cattle, and pork farmers? Mark Livermore breaks that down.
The global food trade has been thrown into turmoil after China abruptly cut off imports of more than 150,000 tons of American beef, a move worth nearly $500 million. The decision came without warning and raised eyebrows because it landed just days after Washington announced fresh tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. For U.S. ranchers and exporters, the blow was immediate and painful, while competitors from other nations rushed to seize the open space in China's massive market. The question now is whether this marks the start of a wider trade war or a deeper shift in global power plays that China's sudden suspension of American beef shipments was not random. It followed quiet inspections at ports timed almost exactly with Washington's tariff escalation. While official statements cited food safety concerns, few experts took that explanation at face value. The scale and suddenness of the decision made clear that it was a calculated signal. In 2024, American beef exports to China exceeded $1.2 billion and demand was steadily climbing. Cutting off access without negotiation demonstrated that agricultural trade is no longer insulated from geopolitics. It underscored how quickly political choices can disrupt supply chains and reshape industries overnight. The economic impact has been swift. Data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture revealed more than $520 million worth of beef orders canceled or rerouted within weeks. States like Texas, Kansas, and Nebraska, where cattle production underpins local economies, have been hit the hardest. Ranchers who had secured long-term contracts are now forced to dump surplus herds into the domestic market, driving down prices and intensifying financial strain. One Nebraska producer described how exports planned months in advance are being sold at steep discounts, forcing many operations into losses that ripple across the agricultural chain. The fallout stretches well beyond the ranchers themselves. Feed suppliers, trucking firms, and cold storage operators have all been caught in the disruption. Some report layoffs, while others cut hours, pointing to the same conclusion: an entire supply network is struggling to absorb the shock. For many rural communities, where agriculture serves as a backbone of employment, the consequences are more than economic. They are deeply social. Analysts argue that Beijing's move carries a sharper political edge. American farm exports are not just commodities. They come from states with enormous electoral weight. Striking this sector creates pressure not only on producers but also on the broader political system. By targeting ranchers and related industries, China effectively raises a domestic political cost for Washington's trade policies. Meanwhile, Russia has stepped in to seize the opportunity. In the first quarter of 2025, Russian beef exports to China surged more than 300% compared to the previous year. This growth was not improvised. A 2023 bilateral agreement had already eased inspection rules and cleared dozens of Russian processing plants for export. Infrastructure investments followed, including a major railway link completed in late 2024 that now connects Russia's cattle-producing regions directly to Western China. With faster delivery times and transactions settled in yuan or rubles, trade is bypassing the U.S. dollar entirely. Russian officials described this as a product of years of cooperation, positioning their industry as a stable long-term partner rather than a temporary substitute. For China, the shift is strategic. Nearly one quarter of the beef consumed domestically comes from imports. The United States once supplied a large share of that demand, but Moscow is now filling the gap. Russia has announced an additional $1.1 billion investment to double beef production by 2027, with industrial-scale farming projects already underway. Although concerns remain about food safety and quality control, China appears willing to tolerate such risks as long as trade partners align with its political and economic strategies. Other traditional suppliers face their own challenges. Argentina, once a major exporter, is weighed down by inflation and erratic trade policies that drive unpredictable costs and supply shortages. As competitors falter and alliances shift, the global beef trade has become yet another arena where economic decisions reflect larger struggles for power and influence. Australia, once a reliable partner in China's beef supply chain, has made progress in repairing ties with Beijing. Yet its exporters continue to encounter inconsistent inspections that complicate trade. Neither Australia nor Argentina provides a level of predictability China now prioritizes. Against this backdrop, Russia's ability to deliver stability, flexible payment terms, and faster logistics has made it a preferred supplier. By early 2025, the financial system supporting this partnership had already shifted. Most contracts between China and Russia were being settled in local currencies, reducing reliance on the US dollar. Combined with the efficiencies of cross-border rail transport and formalized long-term agreements, Russia has emerged as Beijing's favored choice. For China, reliability and strategic alignment have proven more valuable than absolute perfection in supply standards. In March 2025, Beijing escalated its response to Washington's trade moves by imposing tariffs on more than 700 American agricultural goods. Pork, dairy, almonds, sorghum, and other products were targeted, covering over $11 billion in trade. The announcement came just after Washington reimposed tariffs on Chinese technology exports, cementing the impression of tit-for-tat escalation. Observers warned that this was not a passing dispute but part of a deeper decoupling in which agriculture is increasingly wielded as leverage. Food, once considered a neutral commodity, is now openly deployed as a tool of strategy. The numbers illustrate the scale of the shift. In 2022, the United States supplied more than 12% of China's beef imports. By early 2025, that figure had dropped below 6% with no sign of recovery. Analysts caution that if current trends persist, American exporters risk permanent exclusion from one of the fastest-growing protein markets in the world. As Beijing strengthens trade networks with partners more closely aligned to its political and financial priorities, the chance of re-entry becomes slimmer. At the same time, Washington has shown no indication of slowing its tariff campaign. Plans are already underway to expand duties to nearly $18 billion worth of Chinese imports, adding to global concerns about spiraling tensions. For U.S. agriculture, the consequences are mounting. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, American farm exports to China fell by nearly 28%. Economists argue that such cycles of retaliation rarely protect domestic producers. Instead, they shrink the overall scale of international trade, leaving both buyers and sellers worse off. While Washington digs deep into tariff battles, Beijing is locking in its future food security. New agreements with Russia and other partners extend beyond temporary purchases. They involve multi-year commitments, currency arrangements outside the dollar, and shared infrastructure investments. Together, these partnerships are designed to reshape the very architecture of trade, ensuring that China's supply chains are increasingly insulated from U.S. influence. Even if diplomatic relations improve, the structures being built today reduce the likelihood that American exporters will regain their former role. This transformation reaches far beyond agriculture. It reflects a broader realignment in how China approaches critical supply chains. By linking economic networks directly to political objectives, Beijing is ensuring that food security is inseparable from its diplomatic agenda. The ripple effects are visible across entire regions, unsettling old trade patterns and reinforcing new alliances. Analysts note that once supply chains are rebuilt around new partners, they are not easily reversed. Logistics corridors, inspection protocols, and financial systems form lasting frameworks that cannot be undone with a single negotiation. For American exporters, the risks are profound. Access is not only being lost temporarily, but may be restructured away from them for the long term. Returning would require rebuilding support networks from scratch, even as competitors consolidate their advantages. The challenge is compounded by China's investment in domestic production. In 2024, Chinese beef output rose more than 5%, supported by state-backed projects in Inner Mongolia and Sichuan. China's approach is distinctly two-pronged. On one side, it expands foreign partnerships with countries like Russia and Kazakhstan, securing long-term contracts under favorable financial terms. On the other, it strengthens its own production base to reduce reliance on external suppliers altogether. For the United States, this creates a dual obstacle. Rivals are locking in market share abroad while Beijing simultaneously boosts its self-sufficiency at home. ASD's trend harden. The window for American ranchers and exporters to reclaim lost ground grows narrower. Many hope for a diplomatic breakthrough, yet the evidence suggests a deeper structural transformation is already underway. The cycle of tariffs shows no signs of slowing, and China continues to formalize agreements with alternative suppliers eager to entrench themselves in its market. Waiting for the storm to pass may no longer be enough. America's agricultural role in China is not just being disrupted, it is being rewritten. What is required now is a proactive strategy that expands markets beyond Asia, strengthens bilateral trade relations, and adapts to the financial mechanism shaping a multipolar world. For Beijing, food imports have moved beyond economics. They have become instruments of diplomacy and geopolitical influence, tools to reward allies and punish rivals without direct confrontation. This form of soft power carries risks, yet it is reshaping the very foundation of global trade. For those tracking these shifts, it is no longer enough to measure tariffs or export volumes. What matters are the consequences rippling outward into jobs, food prices, and the strength of rural communities across the world. As politics increasingly directs the flow of food, stability now depends on trust, adaptability, and cooperation among trading partners. Without these elements, even the most established trade relationships can collapse with little warning. The agricultural conflict between the United States and China is only one part of a broader story of economic decoupling that stretches from semiconductors to soybeans. What once looked like isolated disputes is converging into a new global order where supply chains are built around political alignment rather than efficiency or tradition. For American agriculture, success can no longer rest solely on quality or price competitiveness. It now depends on diplomacy and the ability to adapt to shifting trade structures. Every new shipping corridor, every long-term contract, and every financial agreement signals that agricultural trade has entered a new era. China's pivot toward Russia and other aligned partners highlights that trade is increasingly strategic, not transactional.